Life will not always be smooth. There will be days when you wake up and your heart feels heavy, when the challenges seem endless, and when nothing appears to be going your way. But happiness is not something that comes only when the storm has passed. It's something you choose to cultivate even while the rain is still falling. You have the ability to push yourself to find joy, even in hardship, by reminding yourself that every difficulty carries a lesson, every delay has wisdom, and every pain comes with a purpose. When life becomes overwhelming and challenges weigh heavily on your shoulders, it's easy to focus on what's going wrong, what's missing, or what has been lost. But the heart begins to find peace when you shift your attention toward the blessings you still have, no matter how small they may seem. Gratitude is not just about saying a thank you when things go well. It's about recognizing that even in hardship, there are countless gifts you are receiving every single moment. The air you breathe is a blessing. The ability to open your eyes in the morning is a blessing. The people who love you and care for you are blessings. Even the fact that you can think, reflect, and pray is a blessing in itself. When you consciously start to notice these things, your mind changes its pattern from constant complaint to deep appreciation. And this has the power to transform your entire outlook. Many people believe they will only feel grateful when life becomes perfect, but that is a misconception. Life will never be without challenges, and there will always be something that could be better. If you wait for everything to align before feeling thankful, you will miss out on the joy available to you right now. Gratitude is not dependent on circumstances. It is a mindset, a choice you make every day. When you wake up and choose to thank the Almighty for what you have, you take the first step toward a happier, more peaceful heart. Even if all you can say is, "I am grateful that I am alive today," you have already begun to invite light into the darkness. Gratitude also changes how you see your problems. Instead of viewing challenges as purely negative, you begin to notice the hidden lessons and opportunities within them. A difficulty may teach you patience, resilience, or empathy. A loss may help you appreciate the people who remain in your life. Even delays may be protecting you from something you cannot yet see. When you train yourself to look for the good in every situation, you realize that there is always something to thank the Almighty for, even in moments of pain. The heart that remembers its blessings is less likely to feel empty or hopeless. Studies have shown, and personal experience confirms, that those who regularly practice gratitude feel more content and less stressed, even when their external circumstances have not changed. Why? Because gratitude shifts the focus from what is lacking to what is already present. Instead of feeding the mind with constant thoughts of "I don't have enough," you begin to think, "I have more than I realized." This inner shift doesn't remove life's challenges, but it gives you the strength and optimism to face them without being crushed by them. It's important to make gratitude a daily habit, not just an occasional feeling. Start small, perhaps by reflecting every morning on 3 things you're thankful for. They don't have to be grand or extraordinary. It could be the smile of a loved one, the taste of your favorite meal, or simply the gift of another day to try again. When you consciously practice gratitude, you strengthen your emotional resilience, making it harder for negativity to control you. Gratitude also brings you closer to the Almighty. When you acknowledge your blessings, you are in essence acknowledging His mercy and generosity. You are saying, "I see what you have given me, and I appreciate it." This attitude not only pleases Him, but also opens the door for even more blessings. The more you recognize and thank Him for what you have, the more contentment and goodness will flow into your life, sometimes in ways you never expected. Choosing gratitude, especially when life is hard, is not easy. It requires you to resist the natural tendency to dwell on the negative and instead seek out the positives, however small. But with consistent effort, it becomes a natural part of your character. You stop waiting for happiness to arrive and instead create it through the lens of thankfulness. And when you do, you'll find that even in your most difficult days, your heart carries a quiet joy that no hardship can take away. There are moments in life when it feels as though the pain will never end, when every day seems heavier than the last and every step forward feels like a struggle. In such times, it is easy to believe that this hardship is permanent, that things will never improve. But the truth is, nothing in this world lasts forever. not your happiness, not your sadness, not your difficulties. Everything in life comes in seasons, and every season eventually changes. The night may feel long and dark, but it always gives way to the morning. Your heart may feel heavy today, but with time it will find relief. This understanding is one of the most powerful tools for maintaining hope during difficult times. When you remind yourself that every trial is temporary, you give yourself the strength to endure it with patience. Think back to the challenges you faced in the past, the moments you thought you would never get through. At the time they may have felt endless, but here you are today having overcome them. Some of those difficulties may have even led to blessings you could not see at the time. This is proof that the storms you face now will also pass. Even if the situation does not change overnight, your ability to bear it, your strength, and your perspective will grow with each passing day, making it easier to cope. Hardship often feels longer than it actually is because our focus remains fixed on the pain. We replay the negative thoughts in our minds, magnifying them until they seem to fill our entire life. But if you take a step back and view life as a series of changing moments, you begin to see that this particular moment, as hard as it is only one chapter in your story. And just like every chapter, it will come to an end. This awareness gives you the courage to keep moving forward, even if you can only take small steps. Sometimes, the temporary nature of hardships is not only about the passing of time, but also about the changes that take place within us. A challenge may remain for a while, but our perception of it can change, our ability to handle it can increase, and our hearts can become stronger. In this way, even if the external situation takes time to shift, the inner burden can become lighter. It is often not the length of the hardship that breaks us, but the way we choose to carry it. With patience, perspective, and trust, the same weight that once felt unbearable can become manageable. It's important to avoid making permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. When life is hard, it can be tempting to give up, to lose hope, or to think that there is no point in trying. But if you remind yourself that these feelings will not last, you will resist the urge to act on them. Instead, you can choose to hold on until the wave passes. The pain may feel intense right now, but one day you will look back and realize that it was only a part of the journey, not the entire journey. Another way to strengthen yourself through temporary hardships is to focus on the small signs of improvement along the way. Perhaps the situation has not fully resolved, but you notice small blessings, moments of laughter, acts of kindness from others, or a slight ease in your emotions. These are reminders that change is happening, even if slowly. Appreciating these signs helps you stay hopeful and patient while waiting for the bigger shifts to occur. The knowledge that nothing lasts forever also brings a sense of balance to life. It reminds us not to be overly attached to the good moments because they too will pass, and not to be destroyed by the bad moments because they will fade as well. Life is a continuous cycle of ups and downs, and understanding this reality allows us to walk through both with a steady heart. This balance keeps us from falling into despair in hard times and from arrogance in easy times. Every hardship has an expiration date, even if you cannot see it right now. Just as every winter eventually gives way to spring, your season of difficulty will also give way to a season of relief. Until then, you can hold on to the hope that better days are ahead, and you can choose to live with patience and faith, knowing that the chapter you are in now is not the final chapter of your story. When life becomes overwhelming, one of the greatest sources of frustration is focusing on all the things we cannot control. We worry about the future, about how others will act, about the decisions people will make, or about circumstances entirely beyond our influence. This kind of thinking drains our energy and leaves us feeling helpless. The truth is, no matter how much we plan or stress, there will always be aspects of life that are not in our hands. The key to peace in difficult times is learning to shift our attention away from what we cannot change and toward what we can. This shift is not just about practicality. It's about regaining control over your own mind, emotions, and actions. When you choose to focus on what you can control, you stop wasting your energy on endless what-if scenarios. Instead, you direct that same energy toward making small but meaningful improvements in your life. Even in the middle of hardship, There are always steps you can take to make your situation better. It could be something as simple as establishing a daily routine to give structure to your days, reaching out to someone for emotional support, or dedicating a few minutes to an activity that brings you peace. These actions may seem small, but they give you a sense of progress and stability in the midst of chaos. It is also important to recognize that your attitude and mindset are fully within your control. You may not be able to stop a storm from coming into your life, but you can decide how you will respond to it. You can choose to complain endlessly, or you can choose to face it with courage and patience. This is not to say that you should ignore your feelings. Acknowledging your pain is necessary, but dwelling on negativity will only deepen your suffering. By focusing on cultivating a constructive mindset, you create an environment where hope can grow even when the circumstances are difficult. Part of focusing on what you can control involves setting realistic, achievable goals for yourself. When problems feel overwhelming, break them down into smaller steps. If you are struggling financially, for example, you may not be able to fix everything overnight, but you can make a budget, look for ways to save, or seek additional sources of income. If you are dealing with emotional pain, you might not be able to heal instantly, but you can practice self-care, talk to someone you trust, and engage in activities that bring you comfort. Each small action is a brick that builds the foundation for a better tomorrow. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is that you are not responsible for controlling other people's behavior. Often we exhaust ourselves trying to make others act the way we want, only to be left disappointed. By letting go of the need to control others, you free yourself from unnecessary stress. Instead, focus on how you can respond to their actions in a way that protects your peace and integrity. This change in perspective can drastically reduce the emotional weight you carry. Another aspect of focusing on what you can control is being present in the moment. Many of our worries come from living too much in the past or the future, regretting what happened or fearing what might happen. But the only moment you can truly influence is the one you are in right now. Ask yourself, what can I do in this moment to make my life better, even if only a little? That question alone can guide you toward practical, uplifting action. When you consistently put your attention on what you can control, you develop resilience. Life's challenges no longer feel like insurmountable mountains because you're no longer trying to move the entire mountain at once. You're simply taking the next step forward. Over time, these steps lead to real progress and your confidence grows. You begin to trust that no matter what life throws at you, you can handle it because you know how to focus on the parts of the situation within your reach. By making this mental shift, you free yourself from the exhaustion of fighting battles you were never meant to fight. You stop drowning in frustration over things you cannot change, and instead invest your time and effort into what truly matters and what you can influence. This is how you begin to rebuild your life, even in the middle of hardship, one intentional choice at a time, grounded in the awareness that while you cannot control everything, you can always control something. The people, words, and environments you surround yourself with have a powerful influence on the way you think, feel, and respond to life's challenges. When you are already going through a difficult time, your mind is more vulnerable to negativity, and what you feed it can either lift you up or pull you further down. This is why surrounding yourself with positivity is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Just as you wouldn't pour dirt into a clean glass of water and expect it to remain pure, you cannot constantly expose yourself to toxic influences and expect your thoughts to stay clear and hopeful. When you spend time with people who constantly complain, criticize, or see the worst in every situation, their negativity starts to seep into your own mindset. Without even realizing it, you begin to adopt their way of thinking, and the weight of your problems feels even heavier. On the other hand, being around those who encourage you, remind you of hope, and speak with kindness can help you see light even in dark moments. These people may not be able to remove your difficulties, but their presence can make the burden easier to carry. They inspire you to believe that better days are possible, and that you are stronger than you think. Positivity is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about surrounding yourself with influences that help you see the good that still exists, even when life is hard. This can mean choosing to listen to uplifting talks, reading inspiring books, or engaging with content that nourishes your mind and soul rather than drains it. What you watch, read, and listen to every day shapes your thoughts, and your thoughts shape your emotions. If you feed your mind with messages of hope, resilience, and gratitude, your perspective on challenges will naturally shift. Your environment also plays a big role in how you feel. A cluttered, messy space can contribute to feelings of chaos and stress, while a clean, organized space can bring a sense of calm and control. Even small changes, like letting in natural light, adding a plant, or keeping your space tidy, can have a noticeable effect on your mood. Creating an environment that feels safe and peaceful gives your mind room to breathe, think clearly, and focus on solutions rather than problems. What's also important to be intentional about the conversations you allow yourself to engage in. When your heart is already heavy, getting caught up in gossip, arguments, or constant talk about problems can drain your energy. Instead, seek out conversations that inspire, encourage, and challenge you in a healthy way. Talk to people who help you grow, who remind you of your values, and who speak words that lift your spirit. If you find that your current circle is filled with negativity, it doesn't necessarily mean you must cut people off completely, but it does mean you should set boundaries. Limit the time you spend in environments that leave you feeling worse, and make a conscious effort to balance them with spaces and people that fill you with hope. Positivity is contagious, and the more you expose yourself to it, the more naturally it will flow from you as well. Another powerful way to surround yourself with positivity is to be a source of it yourself. When you make the effort to encourage others, express gratitude, and offer kindness, you create a ripple effect that often returns to you. People are drawn to those who radiate hope and peace, and by being that person for others, you will find yourself naturally surrounded by the same energy. Even in the hardest times, you have the choice to decide what voices you will listen to, what environments you will spend time in, and what influences you will allow into your life. By surrounding yourself with positivity, you give your heart the fuel it needs to keep going. You protect your mind from being consumed by despair and open the door for hope to take root. Over time, this consistent exposure to uplifting influences can transform the way you face life's challenges. Not because the challenges disappear, but because you approach them with a stronger, brighter, and more resilient spirit. Now, there will be times in life when no matter how much you try to make sense of things, the pieces simply will not fit together. You will face moments where your plans fall apart, where doors you were counting on suddenly close, and where life takes a turn you never expected. In such moments, it is easy to question everything, to lose hope, and to feel abandoned. But the heart finds peace when it learns to have faith and trust in the Almighty's plan. This trust is not blind ignorance. It is the deep understanding that there is wisdom behind every event, even when that wisdom is hidden from you. When you truly believe that the Almighty sees the full picture while you only see a small part, you can begin to let go of the constant need to control every outcome. You understand that what looks like a setback might actually be protection, and what feels like a loss could be making space for something far better. Just as a child may not understand why a parent takes away something harmful, we may not understand why certain things are kept from us, but we can trust that the one who knows everything is acting with our best interests in mind. Trusting in the Almighty's plan brings a deep sense of relief. You no longer carry the heavy burden of believing that you alone are responsible for making everything work perfectly. You take your steps, put in your effort, and then leave the results in His hands. This does not mean giving up or being passive. It means doing what is within your control while accepting that the final outcome rests with Him. This surrender frees your heart from the constant worry of what if and why me. Instead, you replace those questions with, I trust you and I know you have a purpose for this. Sometimes the hardest part of trust is accepting delays. You may pray for something and feel like the answer is taking too long to come. In these moments, remember that delay is not denial. What you are asking for may not be ready for you yet, or you may not be ready for it. The Almighty's timing is perfect, and what He withholds now may be given later when it will benefit you most. Often when we look back on our lives, we realize that if certain prayers had been answered at the time we wanted, they might have brought harm or led us down the wrong path. Another part of trusting in His plan is recognizing that even pain has a purpose. Hardships can purify the heart, strengthen character, and draw you closer to Him in ways that comfort and ease never could. Many people have found that their most difficult experiences became the turning points that led them to a better version of themselves. The pain they once wished away became the very thing that shaped their strength and deepened their faith. Trust also means believing that you are never alone in your struggle. Even when people leave, misunderstand, or fail to support you, the Almighty is always with you, guiding and protecting you in ways you may not even see. He hears every prayer, every tear, and every silent cry of your heart. This awareness can turn feelings of abandonment into feelings of closeness, knowing that the one who created you is watching over you at every step. Of course, trusting in the Almighty's plan does not mean you will never feel sad, confused, or frustrated. Those feelings are part of being human. Trust is not the absence of emotion. It is the decision to hold on to faith even when emotions are heavy. It is the choice to believe in His goodness while you are still in the middle of the storm, not only when you have reached the calm. When you build this trust, your entire outlook on life changes. You no longer see closed doors as the end of your journey, but as redirection towards something better. You stop comparing your life to others because you know your path is uniquely designed for you. You learn to walk forward with a calm heart, knowing that whatever lies ahead, whether ease or difficulty, is part of a plan that is ultimately for your good. And that trust becomes your anchor, keeping you steady no matter how rough the waves of life may be in the midst of life's struggles. One of the most overlooked acts of strength is simply being kind to yourself. When things go wrong, it's common to be your own harshest critic. You replay mistakes in your mind, judge yourself for not being strong enough, and compare your journey to others who seem to be doing better. This self-blame can quietly drain your spirit and make a difficult situation feel even heavier. But choosing kindness toward yourself changes everything. It allows you to heal without unnecessary guilt, to grow without constant self-criticism, and to move forward without the weight of shame holding you back. Being kind to yourself means accepting that you are human, imperfect, learning, and growing. You will make mistakes, you will have bad days, and you will sometimes fall short of your own expectations. That doesn't make you a failure, it makes you real. Instead of punishing yourself for every misstep, try to see those moments as opportunities to understand yourself better. Ask, what can I learn from this? Rather than why am I like this? This shift in perspective not only softens your inner voice, but also opens the door for growth. Self-kindness also means giving yourself permission to rest. In a world that constantly pushes you to do more, be more, and achieve more, taking time to pause can feel like weakness. But rest is not laziness. It is a necessary part of recovery, both physically and emotionally. Just as your body needs time to heal from an injury, your heart and mind need time to heal from life's hardships. Allowing yourself moments of quiet reflection or simply doing something you enjoy is not selfish. It is essential for your well-being. When you treat yourself with compassion, you create a safe inner space where you can process your feelings honestly. You no longer have to hide your pain or pretend to be okay all the time. Instead, you can acknowledge your struggles without letting them define you. You can say, I'm hurting, but I'm trying, and let that be enough for the moment. This honesty with yourself removes the pressure of perfection and replaces it with patience. Part of self-kindness is also refusing to measure your worth by your lowest moments. It's easy to think that because you've stumbled, you're somehow less valuable or capable. But your worth doesn't disappear because of a setback. The fact that you are still here, still trying, still holding on despite everything, is proof of your strength. Being gentle with yourself means recognizing that effort is as important as outcome, and that progress often comes in small, almost invisible steps. Another important aspect is speaking to yourself the way you would speak to someone you love. If a close friend came to you in pain, you wouldn't tell them they're weak, worthless, or a failure. You would encourage them, remind them of their strengths, and reassure them that things will get better. So why not offer yourself the same kindness? The words you say to yourself have a powerful impact on how you feel. Choose words that heal rather than harm, that build you up rather than break you down. Being kind to yourself doesn't mean avoiding responsibility or ignoring areas where you can improve. It means holding yourself accountable with compassion rather than cruelty. It's the difference between saying, I made a mistake and I can learn from it, and saying, I'm hopeless and I'll never change. The first builds resilience, the second deepens and only 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 deepens despair 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 and only deepens despair. By approaching self-improvement with kindness, you give yourself the motivation to keep going instead of the urge to give up. Ultimately, self-kindness is about understanding that you deserve the same care and patience you so willingly offer to others.